Let's come to order. Welcome to our meeting. The pledge tonight will be said by this is it. Okay, great. We have some Central Magnet Schools, school students. Noah Delp, John Hinkle, Joey Richardson, and Liam Page. So if y'all want to step up here and lead us, we'd appreciate that.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, please join us for a moment of silence. Okay, thank you. Approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion's adopted. Consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Just as a reminder to the audience and the folks watching at home, we had a work session 2 nights ago at which we discussed a lot of this material, so if we seem to be going fast, that would be why. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion's adopted. I don't believe we have any speaking visitors tonight. So Mr. Gill, it brings us to Spotlight.
Yeah, sorry, Dr. Burns. We have 2 separate spotlights tonight. I don't think anybody would object if we first, Kim, why don't we let the Central crew go first? I'm sure they got to get home and study up for something. Anyway, so Dr. Ash, do you want to say anything or introduce anyone? Okay.
Okay. Good night or good evening. My name is Melinda Hamby, and I teach engineering at Central Magnet School. And we are pleased tonight to tell you about our new piece of machinery, a 3D printer. So the biggest question is, what is a 3D printer and where does the paper come out? Well, there's not paper. It is actually better described as a model maker, or in industry we call it something like a rapid prototyping device. It prints actually one thin cross-section layer at a time. What we do in our class, our entry-level engineering class at Central, it's called Introduction to Engineering Design. The students work in a 3D CAD package called Autodesk Inventor. And they will make a 3D model such as the one you see on the screen. And those models are then exported from the Inventor software to the 3D printer software. From there, it prints one very fine layer at a time. It uses a plaster powder, and it lays it down in a very thin layer that is 0.004 of an inch thick. In the areas where it needs to be solid, it gets a solution of binder and ink. And the other areas, it's just the plain powder without any binder or ink. This actually repeats over and over and over again for hundreds or thousands of layers, depending on how tall the part is. So this could take anywhere from 2 to 6 hours. Finally, at the end, the powder is vacuumed up so it's recycled so we can use it again for the next part. What are the benefits of printing in a classroom setting like this? Well, in industry, someone would take a part and print it so they could evaluate it or do, say, market research on the part. But in our classroom, the students actually get to see the whole design process from start to finish. One of the steps that we generally don't get to do in our class is that number 11, create or make. And this printer actually allows us to follow the whole process through and complete even step 11. So you might ask, how did we get this fun toy? This was a very generous grant from the Jennings and Rebecca Jones Foundation. Those are 2 representatives from the foundation there when they came to pick up their Brain Gear toy that we printed for them, and you'll actually get to see that in action in just a moment. We felt like the best thing to do is show you how this works on video rather than just talking about it, because it still doesn't make sense unless you actually see it happen. So I'm going to ask Liam to come up here, go ahead and start the video, and then he'll talk you through what's going on.
So to start off the process, we'll design our solid model in Inventor. This happens with most of our CAD projects. And as you can see here, this is our puzzle cube project. This is and send it to the file. We can send the file to the 3D printer. And so this is what happens as soon as we get the file in. And you can see the arm come across, and it pulls a layer 4/1000 of an inch thick across, which is, of course, very thin. And as it'll move here in a minute, but you can see that it is only binding certain sections of the powder. So only the colored sections are solid, and you can see someone walking in there. And everywhere else is still fine powder. And this will repeat over and over, and it takes a long time. Like this puzzle cube took about 4 hours to complete. And this is all that happens for about 4 hours. So 3 hours later, you can see how thin the powder is. You can actually see the parts through it. And it is finishing up, you can see the top of the part. And this puzzle cube printing right now is much like the one we have on the table over here. And that's what our end result looks like. And this just as it finishes up, it's going to fill in the build chamber and just complete all the finishing processes. We call it a rapid prototyping device, but it's rapid compared to other devices, but it still takes a very long time. We had to cut the video for a while. So here we have, I think, Danny removing the parts from the chamber. We'll open it up. You can actually see how big it is. It takes up a lot of space. And he's already taken a few out. And what he's doing here, he's actually vacuuming everything else that we didn't use, all the unused space from the chamber. And all this is recycled. So considering it's a very expensive part, it's very expensive. And you can see in the very top right, it's going through a little filter that'll take out any excess pieces. So this is him taking out the very last piece. And this is when we'll move into the finishing process, which will make them look all neat and shiny like the other ones we have here. So at this point, he'll close the chamber, and you'll reach these little compartments that'll let you clean it off without getting any dust everywhere. And he uses high compressed, just compressed air to blow off most of the dust. As you can see, we have lots of tools and brushes to help clean it up. And you are looking at any of these models we're passing around, you can actually see how thin the layers are. You see them along one of the sides. There's one of the micro-completed puzzle cubes, the one you're holding right now. There's a model train we designed, a test file sleigh we printed, and finally an F-17 fighter jet we printed. And right here we have Rebecca Jones Foundation people holding one of our coolest models, and it actually moves. Again, we want a very special thanks to James from Rebecca Jones Foundation for their very generous grant to give us this spectacular machine and our grants. So, are there any questions? Me and Ms. Hammy would be happy to answer anything.
Questions for these folks?
And the model you're holding is one of the examples of how it can print impossible objects. So that could not be made in the real world the way it is. It's completely solid, so that it wasn't like wedged in or anything. It came out just like that, and that's one of the big advantages, is that you can do things that nothing else can do.
So it's some sort of powdery substance that this is.
It's a powdered plaster.
Yes, and it's very fine powder until it's bonded together, and it turns into that once we glue it.
Who dropped this?
This, yeah.
Yes.
Who dropped this one?
Oh, that would be me.
Yes.
I was actually thankful it was me and not a student.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Well, it's okay because it actually shows you the interior, and it's kind of interesting to see. It makes a little bit more sense, and you can see that it saves the ink and it doesn't print ink on the inside.
Yeah.
Right.
And so what concepts are you teaching through this process?
Well, the biggest concept is that design process, going all the way through. When a student has a concept in their head and they want to print it or they want to see it all the way through the process, when they can actually have it in the end and hold it out in their hands, it just solidifies the whole process. And And one thing, Liam, would you like to talk about what we found out with your cube when we first printed it?
Actually, we have to actually edit our designs in Inventor to work with the 3D printer in small ways, because in the 3D CAD world, two planes can share the same space, and of course in the geometric and real world that can't happen. So we actually it's actually a learning process, and we learned a lot about geometry and just how the material works and how it interacts.
You had to design some
Yes, clearances.
into it.
What's did you say the course title was for this class?
Introduction to Engineering Design.
So-
It's a Project Lead the Way class.
So where do we go from here?
Well, the next step up is Principles of Engineering, and then we're expanding our program from there, hoping to add things like aerospace and civil engineering, and eventually a capstone senior class where it's called Engineering Design, and you have one project all the way through to the end of the year. And that's really what we hope to use this machine on a regular basis, is that capstone class.
I'll say this, he's an impressive young man, and I'm sure the rest of them are too.
They are.
Thank you.
They are.
So this is a 9th grade class, is that right, more or less, or?
It's a high school class. This is an entry-level engineering class, so anyone in high school can take it, but the thought would be they start in this one as a 9th grader and then go from there. But I have all of the grades in the high school in my class.
Okay, Wayne?
Mr. Gill, these engineering classes at Central Magnet, are they dual enrollment with any partnership with any of our universities?
I don't know, are we doing anything with the university on that?
Not yet, and that's a great question. One of the things we have to do as a Project Lead the Way school is become Project Lead the Way certified, and we're working on that. And once we've accomplished that, then we can offer credit through, it's Rochester Institute or somewhere that Project Lead the Way has negotiated with. So the credits can actually transfer to universities based on how they would take Rochester Institute's credits. Usually it's an elective, some schools will take it as an engineering credit. But we're not there yet, to answer your question.
You know, and Dr. Ash could speak to that, but I mean, Central Magnet's still a work in progress. I mean, we're evolving into and adding new stuff all the time. You see this, you're grateful to have these kind of opportunities for the kids.
Yes, we're really excited about it. There's about 8 different engineering classes we could add. And the students are so eager. They want to know what's coming next and what's after that and what's after that. And I even sometimes have to say, you're going to graduate by then. But we are going to add some other classes eventually. So they're very excited.
Yeah.
Well, engineering degree in college usually takes more credit hours than a normal degree anyway.
Yeah, we like
so,
to say it's a 5-year program,
yeah.
more or less.
But I mean, if they could get a leg up using this, that would be kind of neat.
Right.
Yes, precisely.
Aaron?
What was the grant process with the Jennings and Rebecca Jones Foundation?
Mr. Vaughn, the man you saw in the video, just happened to stop in one day. Dr. Ash brought him to me, and he just said, "What would you like to have in your wildest dreams?" Well, this $35,000 printer would be great, and I kind of thought it was more or less a joke. And honestly, he wrote to us and said, write up a letter about how you'd use it, what it would be worthy to you, and what projects you would do on it. And I was a brand new teacher and a little nervous about that process, but I did it and was very, very excited when we heard last fall that it was going to be awarded to us. Yeah.
Are there other grants that you're currently pursuing? Is there anything the board can do to help you in that regard?
Actually, one of the lady in the video, who is also with the Jennings Foundation, Jennings and Rebecca Jones Foundation, is eager to see if we can let all of our students print on it. Well, that's a little cost prohibitive because it's about $3.60 per cubic inch to print, and we don't have that much material available. We have to purchase some extra. So she and I are working together and trying to pull some strings and see what we could do to have this group actually each have their own print on that. So there may be more to come from them, maybe even from me. That's what we could use support with right now is with them.
Okay, other questions or comments? Well, thank you all very much for coming. That's a very impressive
Thank you.
program.
Thanks for having us.
We will not be offended if the Central Magnet folks want to leave at this point. You're also welcome to stay and enjoy the rest of our exciting meeting, but if you want to go, we won't blame you at all. Thank you for coming.
That's right.
Yeah, hang on just a second.
All right.
Were you ever tempted to say to Justice O'Connor, you want to start cracking on him?
No, I wouldn't. She scared me to death. She's very likable.
She sat next to Scalia. I mean, you know, I'm sure he got contact. She was appointed by Reagan.
Mhm. Yeah, back in '81.
Really, any kind of Reagan questions at all?
Not really. She talked a little bit about how she got appointed. It was mainly questions about how the court operates.
Okay, next we have a second spotlight, and it's on the Atlas program. Of course, everyone knows that Ms. Snell heads that up, so Ms. Snell, take it away.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gill. Atlas is the homeless education program for Rutherford County Schools, and we operate under the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act. When we talk about how many kids experience homelessness, research shows that approximately 10% of all children living in poverty can experience homelessness at some point. And of course, we have seen a large increase over the last 3 years. Nationwide, a 41% increase, not the last 3 years, but ending in 2008-9. But during this time, Tennessee showed a 50% increase. I think that's more because homeless children were being underreported in Tennessee than the fact that we've actually had more homeless children in Tennessee. Up to that point. Now, since that time, the economic conditions have really affected our numbers. In Rutherford County, I started with 2008-9, looking at the data here for you, and we had 794, and that was the year we had the tornadoes. The next year, we had the floods, and our total went up to 851. Last year, with no natural disasters, we had 838 homeless kids in Rutherford County schools. Now, if we look at that 10% of poverty number, according to research, we have almost 16,000 students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. So we could potentially have approximately 1,600 homeless students in Rutherford County schools. As of today, we have 791. That is the size of Eagleville School. It's larger than the population of 23 of our schools. And who qualifies for as homeless under McKinney-Vento? Children who lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. They may be sharing the housing of others because of a loss of housing or economic hardship. They may be living in motels. They may be in shelters, awaiting foster care placement, or living in a place not designed for humans to live. And we do have those in Rutherford County. In Tennessee, 72% of homeless children are doubled up, living with someone else because of a loss of housing. 19% are in shelters, 7% in motels, and then unsheltered about 2%. But in Rutherford County, we don't have as many shelters as in some other parts of Tennessee, so about 86% of our homeless children are actually doubled up. You can see that our doubled up percentage is a little bit bigger. According to a 2010 survey, the biggest challenges facing school districts in serving homeless children, number one was lack of affordable housing. There's not a lot that we can do about the lack of affordable housing, although I do serve on the homeless task force for Murfreesboro and Rutherford County to try to work with the Housing Authority and other homeless providers to improve our ability to provide affordable housing. But the next few are identification of homeless students, transportation is always a huge issue, and then basic needs, lack of community and school awareness, and lack of community collaboration. So that's what I want us to look at tonight. Identification of students, I think we do a great job with this because we use a student residency questionnaire that is given to everybody when they enroll in school or at the beginning of the school year, and that gives the parents an opportunity to answer a couple of questions like where does the child sleep at night, and was he forced into a temporary place because of economic conditions. They answer those two questions. That's a pretty good indication that they're going to qualify. Every school has an Atlas contact person. This person is usually a counselor, and they're trained in the identification of displaced or highly mobile students. And then we have posters and brochures. This is what our brochure looks like. And I have some if you would like to see it. And the posters are very similar. I just didn't bring those with me because they're large. We have those in all of our schools. We have them in the shelters and in places like the motels and things like laundromats, the health department, DHS, lots of places, Journey Home, Greenhouse Ministries, where families go to get services. Transportation. Why do we even have to worry about transportation to school of origin? Well, that's because the McKinney-Vento Act says that homeless children can either enroll in any public school that students living where they're living can enroll, or they can stay in their school of origin. And the school of origin is the school they attended when they were last permanently housed, or the school in which they were last enrolled. And it's generally considered to be in their best interest to keep them in their school of origin to the extent feasible, unless this is against the parents' or guardians' wishes. In Rutherford County, the Transportation Department has a dedicated person to handle Atlas transportation requests, and so far this year we've actually arranged transportation to allow 150, it's gone up since I made the PowerPoint, students to remain in their schools of origin. I got the figures from the Transportation Department today, and so far that has cost us this school year $51,508.72. We also, and that's just on buses. That's not counting if they're in a different county or they're in a place where we're unable to arrange for a bus to go. I use McKinney-Vento subgrant funds to arrange a gas reimbursement for the parent to take the child to school. And there's where we work with other counties. Just today, I was working with Bedford County. Their student services personnel director was here to work with a student who's in school down there, but temporarily living with a family member up here because of a death in the family, and we were working that out with him. We've worked with Cannon, Coffee, Davidson, Robertson, Williamson, and Wilson counties. We actually had some girls last year who attended school in Robertson County, and they were at the domestic violence shelter here in Rutherford County. So we arranged a gas reimbursement for that mother to be able to keep those girls in the school of origin. Because if they're in a shelter, you know, they're going to be there for a limited amount of time, so it would be ridiculous for them to have to transfer schools. Now, how do we meet their basic needs? With having that school Atlas contact person and training for all the schools, we are able to provide assistance with referrals to services that they need. Weekend food backpacks. Every month, Second Harvest Food Bank sends us boxes of food, and we are able to serve 300 kids with weekend food backpacks so that they have food to take home in their own backpack over the weekend, so that when they're not here to have breakfast and lunch at school, they can at least have some food over the weekends. We're also able to help with school supplies and other supplies that they need, and summer camp through the Boys and Girls Club. Boys and Girls Clubs work with us really well to help our Atlas students in a lot of ways, and we send them to their summer camp program. We had 75 Atlas students that participated in the summer camp program last year. Lack of awareness, again, we have training at all schools annually, certified and classified staff, so that whoever the child wants to go and talk to at the school, it might be a cafeteria worker, it might be a custodian, at least they know about the program and they're able to let the Atlas contact person at that school know. And then I collaborate with community groups that provide services, such as the Homeless Task Force, Our Connection, United Way, Reach CC, and so forth. And then if you want more information, there's some links there. I appreciate your time. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you, Ms. Snell.
And if you'd like a brochure.
Just now, with you talked about the cost of transporting kids. Obviously, it's required, but it's a good thing that we do to help these kids out. But what other costs are there associated with educating a homeless, somebody who qualifies as homeless? I think you mentioned backpacks and other supplies that we buy. And are there additional costs? And secondly, what kind of government reimbursement do we get?
Well, cost associated with educating homeless children, our Title I department has 3 Title I teachers who are paid out of the Title I set-aside, which is required for homeless, to serve homeless children. So that's all paid by Title I. And they go to the non-Title I schools and serve the homeless, the at-risk children in those schools. The supplies, basically our children get the same thing that everybody else gets. The main cost is transportation to keep them in that school of origin. And the $55,000 that I explained today was when we have to send a bus to pick up a child, say they had a house fire, or they're in a shelter, say they're in the room in the inn and they go to school in Laverne. We have to have a bus that goes and picks up that child at room in the inn and takes him to Laverne. He still has to run his regular route, but the miles to get the child at room in the inn added to his route increase the cost of that bus driver's route. That's the biggest cost. The McKinney-Vento sub-grant, which is a competitive grant, a 3-year grant that we apply for, pays right now half of my salary, and then it pays for the summer camp program through the Boys and Girls Club, any of the gas reimbursements that I do with parents, and I try to do that as much as possible. And it pays for school supplies, special project supplies. I've been able to provide scrubs for a child that was taking a clinical hospital class where they had to go to the hospital, photography paper, textiles for a textile class, just special things, special projects. And then when the United Way Charity Fund runs out of money, any of our Atlas kids who need clothes, I'm able to buy clothes for them.
Other questions? Grant?
How many other school systems around here actually participate in it? All of them, pretty much?
Every school system in the United States is required to have a liaison for homeless education. Not all of them get the McKinney-Vento sub-grant. In Tennessee, only 15 school systems have been awarded the McKinney-Vento sub-grant. I don't know how many applied, but only 15 got it this last time. And that's pretty typical over the years that I've been up here. There have been about 15 or 16 in Tennessee that actually get money to work with their homeless kids. The others they still have to do the transportation piece and, do whatever is necessary for the child to support his enrollment, attendance, and academic success. But they don't get extra money for it. They use their Title I set aside if they have Title I, but basically it's an underfunded mandate.
Wayne?
You may have said this, but I might have missed it. The doubling up classification, does that include living with grandparents or other relatives?
Yes, it does, because of loss of housing or financial hardship. Now, as I always say in training, if I take my children and I go move in with my mother because my mother's getting older and she needs my help, that's not a homeless situation. But if I take my children and I go move in with my mother because I lost my job and I couldn't pay my rent, that would be a homeless situation.
And was there, again, I hope I didn't miss this if you said it, but is there academic support provided for these kids?
Title I.
It comes through Title I, it's not, okay.
Well, we monitor the report cards of all the Atlas kids in all the schools. And then if they are failing a class, we ask that a remediation plan be put into place and documented and sent to me so that we know that the children are getting the help that they need. Mm-hmm. Now, I've talked with Mr. Odom about this, and he's assured me that that's what our PLCs are for, is to provide that support for all of our students. So in most cases, it's simply a part of the regular programs at the schools. Okay. Most of our schools have support systems in place for all students, and Atlas students are just utilize those support systems.
All right. Aaron?
The McKinney-Vento sub-grant, how often does it come for renewal?
It's a 3-year grant, but that doesn't guarantee that we get the same amount each of those 3 years.
When will we see it expire currently?
This is the first year of the 3-year cycle.
Excellent. Okay, great. is there an age breakdown of the Atlas students? Do we see a greater population at elementary levels rather than high school, or is it pretty well across the spectrum?
I have the data by grade, and interestingly, as a school counselor, which is what I was, 7th grade typically has the highest number of Atlas students, and we know, as counselors, research shows that 7th grade is the hardest year of anyone's life. So how sad is that?
Yeah.
They're already struggling, and right now we have 78 7th graders.
I wonder about Murfreesboro City Schools and the elementary population. Do we see any kind of collaboration? Are we taking on Atlas students at elementary level that would typically be zoned for city, or I guess they wouldn't have a zoning classification if they're Atlas, right?
They, in order to, for School of Origin to be in effect, they have to have been enrolled in our school when they became homeless,
Right.
and then we would be the School of Origin. Now, if they were enrolled in a Mercer City School, they don't have the McKinney-Vento subgrant, but they do serve under McKinney-Vento. I mean, they do identify homeless children and provide services, transportation, and so forth. They typically identify about 100 in their school system.
Are you able to
each year.
share some collaboration with
Oh,
them?
absolutely, yes. We collaborate a lot with them, as well as the other surrounding counties.
All right. Ms. Snell, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
Number 8 is our annual policy, annual review. Questions or comments on any of those policies? Number 9, I think we decided on Tuesday to defer action on that. So that takes us to general discussion, related sort of, I guess, to number 9. I know there was word today that Tennessee's application for a waiver was granted. Can you talk, or give us an update on that?
Yeah, it was indeed passed, and which basically, I think, will eventually eliminate the tags of failing schools and all that. However, there are still real rigorous standards that are in place. Example, under the waiver, Tennessee proposes to raise overall achievement 3 to 5% each year and to cut achievement gap in half over the next 8-year period. Also, we have to track reward schools, which are 10% of schools throughout the state with the highest achievement of overall growth. Focus schools, 10% of Tennessee schools with the largest achievement gaps, and priority schools, the bottom 5% of the state schools in terms of academic progress. So the bill is, the waiver was pages and pages, and we have to go down and break it down. But, you know, there's some, I think it's safe to say, Don will probably agree, there's some cause for celebration, but not a lot. I mean, there's still, the challenges are going to be out there.
But there's not going to be
No.
the different categories of failure that we've been faced with.
They're going to remove all that, it's my understanding.
It's a pretty big piece of news. I don't know that we've all digested it yet, Tim.
Opting out of it, what, the funding that's tied to No Child Left Behind, how does that operate if the state is opting out?
I think we just got a waiver. I don't think it impacted funding. Jeff's not here. I'm sure it didn't now. But I mean, I think we're funded is pretty much the same, but we just got a waiver for some of the criteria.
Okay. Other comments on that or other general discussion? Grant?
I did notice the pattern of the states that were included there. Kind of went just a deal down to the deep middle south, didn't it? That was affected.
You know, I didn't look at them all, to be honest.
Have the TV on when that came across, but it kind of odd. I don't know if it was just happened to work out that way, or if it was maybe they were working together on that.
Maybe I don't know.
There were 10 states I heard, I think, but I didn't see what the other 9 were. Wayne?
I know that there's a concern with the National School Boards Association that this waiver might convince Congress that it takes the expediency out of reauthorizing No Child Left Behind. So that is a concern from the NSB, that this might not keep the push on Congress to fix NCLB. So whether that comes to fruition or not, but that was a concern reverberating through NSBA.
Well, you think the other 40 states would still be putting pressure on to make the
Certainly,
changes?
certainly, but, you know, there's a mentality
I see the
out
logic
there.
of that, yeah.
Yeah, you know, that, you know, not to do anything at this point, so.
Yeah. Speaking of that, Wayne, you want to give us an update on
Get,
your...
14 school board members from the state of Tennessee went to Washington, D.C. this weekend to talk with our senators and our congressmen and women. Basically, I handed out a quick reference guide to all board members, and Mr. Gill and Mr. Odom has one too. Things that we sat down to talk with Senators Corker and Alexander, and 8 of our congressmen and women. For the first time, we met with every Congress person. We met with them and their staff. Many times we only meet with a senior staff member, but we met with all of the elected officials that we had gotten an appointment with, and came away feeling pretty good that they actually understand the problems that we're facing with No Child Left Behind, and the funding issues, and you know, they've taken away the carrot and just, you know, thrown in the stick. So, but there is so much partisanship going on at this time. You know, it's still up in the air whether or not it can be authorized this year. There was a glimmer of hope because they did reauthorize the FAA program, and they've been struggling through that for 4 years. So, you know, really pleased with the way the Congress communicated with us, how their staff people even understood the issues, and literally gave us hope, and that's what we came away with, was hope. And I am now more convinced than ever that we as board members and citizens, we need to stay in touch with our local legislators and our federal legislators, because if they don't hear from us, they assume that we agree with what they do. So, you know, get your email addresses and communicate with them, and share your opinion, because public schools, I think, Mr. Gill, when I got back home, I was trying to read all the papers and catch up with some of the things that were going on here, and but public system is being assaulted by the voucher program, by charter schools, by, you know, unfunded mandates that we've had for years, and it behooves us and every parent and stakeholder to stay in touch with our local people and our federal people.
Thank you for that, Wayne. Thank you for taking the time to go up there and represent us. It's a worthwhile effort, I think.
Well, I think we have their attention. There were over 600 board members from across the United States that took time to go.
Other discussion? Aaron?
I don't know if it was something that you wanted to highlight, Chairman, but when next we meet, it'll be 6:30 on Wednesday of next week for the community forum here in this room, for some feedback from the general public on the search for director of schools.
Right, we won't be meeting as a board, but we, you know, are encouraged to be here in the audience. Mr. Bennett will be running the meeting. Right, thank you for that reminder. That's next Wednesday here at 6:30.
Might be good, there are people watching via television. There is a web opportunity to participate in this process, if I'm not mistaken, through TSBA. What?
There is, and I'm not sure what the status is on that. If that's up and running yet,
It was almost ready the other day, so.
Should they look at the TSBA website or our website?
there should be a link. I think the plan was to link to ours.
I'll check it out tomorrow.
So anybody that's interested in checking that process out, they can check on our website and respond in that way if they'd like. And also, I would like to ask Joyce, do you have any idea of what response we've gotten to our lunch for Wednesday? What number of people you expect? Because that was quite a list that we saw that are invited.
I think we're expecting 50 to 60.
Good.
Anything else? All right, we are adjourned.